as the 3.5 million for Keaukaha Gym that I put in. Would be great if could get a letter of support from your office on the. I was gonna ask the same thing of Fresh, just kind of that collaborative, co-partnership in this project. It would be I don't know if there's something you'd consider, but it would be helpful. Just a letter of support, like to the board, just saying, hey, like you delivered the 3.5, Fresh and Chemo delivering a 3.5, and we're all in this together, and it would be great for the trustees to see that support, from you guys. So I'll send you the details, but that'll be awesome, man. Okay, thanks, bro. Take care.
Aloha nā kahuaiwai, luna ho'omalu, luna ho'omalu a kākou a Pauloa. E ho'omalu kākou. E keli kamakua lani ki loa ko ke ao holokoa. E ia hui mākou kaupo e ohana I aku ko mei nei, ka ohana o ke ana kuleana Hawaii. Nā kahuaiwai a ke ia mau komite e kolu e halawai ana ke ia la holokoa. Nau e mālama I nā papahana, nā mea e waiho ana I mō lākou, a nau e koku aku I lako e koho I ko lako ala hele kuai ma ke koho ani ka pono. Ke kua alaka iho I lako a pau ka lako halawai hoi ia I lako a pauloi ko lako wahi kupono. Pēnei me ka mako au na au e lua me na hoa kipa I kipa mai ki ia la. O oipu me mako ma kaino ka au ki hiwa Yesu Christo ka o leo pule. Amene.
Mahalo, Hailama. Okay. Let's see. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. This meeting can be viewed via live stream on OHA's website at www.oha.org/livestream. If you would like to testify on any agenda item during this Zoom meeting, please raise your hand, and when that subject is announced, when called upon, please unmute your mic. You'll be given the ability to turn your camera on during your testimony, and when you're POW, please mute your mic. We're recording today's meeting for the sole purpose of producing written minutes, which will become the official record of this meeting. In order to eliminate any background noise which can affect the quality of the sound on OHA's live stream and making it difficult to hear the speaker, please mute your device's microphones until you're called on to speak. At the prompting of the chair, BAE staff will do a roll call to determine quorum at the beginning of every meeting. 5 board members present in person and virtually constitutes a quorum. Roll call votes will also be called to determine the board's position on committee matters. A simple majority of committee members present will constitute the position of any matters that require a vote of its members. Trustees who are joining us by Zoom, please enable your cameras for the duration of the meeting if you are able to do so. All other OHA staffers, please enable your cameras when you need to address the committee members. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. When recognized by the chair, please proceed to speak and then lower your hand when you're done. For those trustees joining this remote meeting from a private location, such as your home, please state the name of any person 18 years of age or older who are present with you at your location. And trustees, if you need to leave the meeting, please inform the chair and announce that you're leaving the meeting, okay? All right. The May 28th, 2025 meeting of the Committee on Beneficiary Advocacy and Empowerment is being called to order. The time is now 9:07 a.m. Leanne, please call the roll.
Trustee Huna,
Present.
Trustee Akaka. Here. Trustee Akina,
Aloha mai kako.
Trustee Alapa. Present. Trustee Kahele,
Present. Morning.
good morning. Trustee Lindsay. Trustee Souza. Trustee Waihe,
Present.
Chair Galutaria. 9, that makes a quorum.
Okay, we got the full canoe. Joining us today is OHA's CEO, Stacy Ferreira, or is it Ferreira? What is it?
Depends if you're in Portugal or Hawaii.
Okay,
In Portugal, it's Ferreira,
okay,
but if you're here in Hawaii, Ferreira.
All
All
right.
good, whichever.
okay. She's joined along with some of her administrative staff. Stacy, if you would please call on your staff, introduce them if you will.
Mahalo, Chair, Vice Chair, trustees joining us in person and online. We have Chief Operating Officer Kehau Pu'u, Interim Corporation Counsel Everett Ota, Lead Compliance Specialist Kamakana Ferreira, IT Systems Engineer and Administrators Daniel Santos, and Arlene Aguinaldo. Mahalo.
Navy Waterman, aloha, thank you so much for being with us, providing us with the legal direction. Okay. Like every meeting that we chair, I'd like to throw out a theme for us to abide by today, and it's a olelo no eau. A ohe hana nui ke alu ia. No task is too great when we work together. Okay, so that's going to be our theme for this meeting. As we move forward, I'd like to next move for the first item of the agenda, approval of the minutes of April 2nd, 2025.
So moved.
Hear a motion and a second? Thank you. Mahalo. Any discussion on this matter, members? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Okay. Leanne.
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye.
Trustee Akaka. Aye. Trustee Akina.
Aye.
Trustee Alapa. Aye. Trustee Kahele,
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay. Aye. Trustee Souza. Trustee Waihe,
Yes.
Chair Galutaria.
Aye.
9 yes votes.
Mahalo,
Motion
members.
passes.
Appreciate that. Now I'd like to review our public policy guidelines. Public testimony should be limited to matters listed on today's meeting agenda. If issues are raised about items not on the agenda, you'll be called out of order, and I'll direct you to limit your testimony to the item currently being considered on the agenda. Your name will be called, microphone unmuted when it's your turn to testify. If you're not audible when called upon, you will be muted and the next testifier called. State your name, organization if applicable, agenda item you'll be speaking on as well. Oral testimony will be limited to 5 minutes. A timer will be on the screen to count down 5 minutes. Your mic will automatically be muted once you have completed your oral testimony or your time has expired. Today, We have no action items, so basically we're going to be listening to presentations and we'll engage in Q&A shortly thereafter. Okay, so if we could begin, I'd like to ask our kapuhana to introduce our first guest.
Mahalo, Chair. I'd like to call up to the board table Keith DeMello, our Senior VP of Communications and External Affairs for the Ulupono Initiative. Aloha, Keith. Before Keith gets into his presentation and we talk more details around the MOU that you have in front of you, I just want to kind of tee up how Keith and I came to the MOU that's in front of you today.
Sure.
So back in 2022, I was working at the legislature, and Keith was at Ulupono, and he was coming before the ledge to basically offer Ulupono services for the Department of Agriculture. And those services were grant writing. So we know that Department of Agriculture is severely under-resourced for the big work that they're charged with. And Ulupono Initiative was coming forward as a community partner with the state agency to say, we have expertise in these various areas: water, agriculture, or food security, energy, and basically offering free of charge their grant writing services so that DOA could basically put in for these federal grants to get more monies for the department so that they could do all of the work that they were charged with. And I was so impressed, and I thought, wow, what an amazing partnership for a state agency to have. Again, no cost to the agency, but basically it's shared goals for the state. And that's really their whole push, their initiative. And so remembering that, when I came to OHA, and I know that VAI is one of our board priorities, wanting to make sure that, again, with all of the issues that we have regarding VAI across our Pai'aina, we have two that we're working on right now: the water diversion in Anahola on DHHL property, as well as Kualapu'u Reservoir, and that's the reservoir that is supposed to be feeding the DHHL homesteads in Ho'olehua, and many other VAI issues that this board has come across over the decades and will in the future. That having some expertise, at our that we can access is super critical to us. And so it's technical expertise that Ulupono is offering, but it's also grant writing. And Keith's going to jump into his presentation. He's going to just show you how effective they are in being able to acquire these grants. And so we basically met up again, and when I came to OHA, we started talking, and he's like, yeah, let's see how we can put something together and bring it before the board, and let's start this partnership. And it's been more informal in the background, but we'd like to formalize it because there's so much good work that needs to be done, and we believe that we can put this work on hyperspeed once we get, some of these heavy hitters from Ulupono working with us. And when you do your presentation, Keith, if you can kind of share the kinds of experts that you have on your team that's going to be assisting with this work, would be really helpful. So I'll turn it over to Keith.
Hey, Keith, 1 second, please. Seems odd that we would ask for testifiers before you speak, but that's what we have to do. This is a formal setting. So, Leanne, do we have any testifiers to speak on this matter?
Jermaine is online. She did not raise her hand, but we might want to check with her.
Jermaine, do you have something to share with regard to this testimony? Yes? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, please proceed. Sorry about that.
Well, thank you, Cece, for that context.
Well, I'm sorry, you got to turn on your mic. Just press that button. Mahalo.
There you go. Okay. Well, thank you for the context, and thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. Good to see you both again, and trustees, thank you for the time. I greatly appreciate it. We do see this, and this presentation will go into some of the details, not too long, about 5 or 10 minutes. And in keeping with the chair's theme for today, I think this is an opportunity to work together for Hawaii, even amid what some would call the chaos at the federal level. We can still focus on the opportunities in front of us. So if we can start the first slide. Okay.
in the board packet. Do you have the board packet?
I can get it started too. I kind of know it off the top of my head. Yeah. While they potentially get it up. But for context, that playing off of what was already shared about the Department of Agriculture, we saw great opportunity to increase capacity around grant writing work within the state. And this followed up on some immense return on investment. And when I say return on investment, I define that as getting dollars for some of our own partners. And with Ulupono Initiative, we work in 4 sectors. And that's local food production, renewable energy, clean transportation, and freshwater management. And over the last 10 years, we've been providing grant writing support to our nonprofit partners. And looks like we might be getting our presentation shortly. There you go. Perfect. And so what this does is we've seen great success on that model that we've proven out with our nonprofit partners, basically to provide support with grant writing services. And we want to replicate that amongst our government partners. And but first, let's a little bit about Ulupono Initiative in case you don't have any foreknowledge of that. But on the next slide, you can see Ulupono. We were founded in 2009, and we strive to improve the quality of life for the people of Hawaii, to provide and identify sustainable solutions, again, in those 4 sectors. Simply put, food, energy, transportation, and water, fresh water specifically. A lot of people think we are a nonprofit or a foundation. We're actually set up as an LLC, and that's because of our history. We were established as an impact investment firm. And I can tell you though, for all the organizations I've ever worked with, we're as mission driven as any nonprofit. Our board of directors keeps us accountable to having an impact within our sectors. And we do work exclusively in Hawaii, so nowhere else. And on our next slide, you can see a few of the examples of our projects. And again, you see them organized under our 4 sectors. I won't go into all of them. But under food, you can see the Bucks Double Up Food Bucks. That's a great program that works within the SNAP, the federal SNAP program. And how I describe it, it ties food assistance to local produce. It incentivizes local residents to buy local produce. You can see there under freshwater, we've been a partner and supporter of the Hawaii Community Foundation's Freshwater Initiative. Under VI, that's Wastewater Alternatives and Innovations. At the bottom there under water, those are the folks that work on the cesspool challenge that we have in our state. I'm happy to announce that through this program, we've secured, looks like we've secured $4 million of federal dollars through an EPA grant that actually is moving forward. So there are some bright spots even amongst the current federal situation. And let's see, just to touch on a few other things. Under energy, we help to pass performance-based regulation, which with HECO, our energy utility, provides both a carrot and a stick. So what I mean by that is a carrot to provide incentives for them to reach our renewable energy goals, but a stick if they fall behind, there are penalties. So having both work together is very effective. And then under clean transportation, a recent good example of our work is the BAE program. So the bike share program, we helped to establish that. And last year it was transferred over to the city as a legitimate public transportation system. But moving on to the next slide. And this is where we get into what I had started to touch on approximately over the last decade. We've had a very successful grant writing program with our nonprofit partners, like the Kohala Center, for example, on the Big Island. Over that year, we've invested through grants, $1.4 million to various programs. And all told, that has brought in $140 million for local farmers or local ag community. So we don't get a cent of that. We just provide through grants and help pay for grant writers or help to increase those nonprofit partners' capacity. On the next slide, you see a breakout of what that actually looks like. You can see the partners on the left column, the Kohala Center, or actually let's see, yeah, and we have the Oahu Agriculture and Conservation Association would be probably the top three. Would be Kohala Center, the Oahu Agriculture and Conservation Association. Hawaii Farmers Bureau is a great partner as well. Again, how I would define return on investment and achieving, success as a result of our investment in those grant dollars, great return there. And again, all of that goes to our local ag partners and programs. So as I said before, we wanted to replicate this. We saw an opportunity within state and local government. On the next slide, I believe it lists, yes. So this is the concept of the program. The goal to enhance grant writing capacity across state agencies, which is now expanding to multiple counties. Currently, our partners are the governor's office, and we do have a signed memorandum of understanding with the governor's office that applies to any executive branch agency. We have a signed MOU with Honolulu, so City and County of Honolulu, as well as Maui County, and one in the works with Hawaii County. And again, as it states there, federal opportunities within food, energy, transportation, and freshwater. We're very eager to help identify and support those agencies in going after those dollars. On the next slide, I think this is more of a graphical representation of what we hope to have. You can see Ulupono Initiative. We work with two partners in the grant writing and government affairs sphere. So the first is SR Partners. Some of you might know them as Skog Rasmussen. So Melissa Hamp over there, very good.
Is that Melissa Hemp?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, based on Maui. Her team, she would put it, her cadre of grant writers would do the bulk of the grant writing support. And then Strategies 360, that's Andy Weiner, if some of you might know him, based in DC. They've actually provided a lot of support in the congressionally directed spending or the earmark space with the agencies. On the right side, you see the process by which we propose working together. So either OHA or Ulupono, we identify a high impact opportunity. We bring that to the table. We confirm alignment, so agreement between both of us, specifically within the four sectors. We would greenlight the pro bono grant writing services for that project. We would only ask that OHA or the program that the funding or the project would be led by would agree to work with our grant writer. At that point, Ulupono, we're hands off. We don't want to provide any or even the perception of influence. We essentially underwrite the grant writer, and that grant writer collaborates with, in this case, OHA directly. And then at the end, once that application is complete, that grant application is donated as a gift of service to OHA for OHA to submit. So there are no funds that we're requesting. The purpose of the MOU is just to provide a framework for it, transparency, keep it even above the appearance of any kind of, some people might take it the wrong way. Why is Ulupono trying to do this? We want to support and advocate for progress within our four sectors, period. And that's essentially it. Yeah. Our team at Ulupono, and sure.
Kalumai, I was asking Keith if he could share with the board his team members, the subject matter experts that are on the Ulupono team.
Yep. First off, the heavy lifting in this in this program, SR Partners, Melissa Hamp. She will work on grant opportunities, grant application directly, or bring in others. She is phenomenal, as I think a lot of you might know of her work. She's kind of everywhere and very plugged in into the opportunities that are out there for Hawaii. I'm astounded by how quickly and how she's just period able to work with agencies, very knowledgeable. Andy Weiner at Strategies 360, he also has a team there based in DC. They, again, have been very critical to our support. There's sort of two spaces, right? And at the federal level, you have your agency programs within departments like USDA, EPA, but then you also have on the congressional side, the congressionally directed spending, which is an entirely different process. And so Andy's team has been very helpful in that, in working with the Hawaii congressional delegation on both sides of the House, this House and Senate. We have approximately 7 submitted AKA earmarks that we've worked with the Department of Agriculture and the ADC Agribusiness Development Corporation, and we're essentially waiting for that process to complete to see if they are awarded. With other departments across the state under our current agreements, MOUs, the bulk of which has been with the state of Hawaii, we have over $100 million worth of grant applications submitted. And again, this program has only been running for about a year. So there's the potential for that. About 6 million, I want to say, has been actually awarded. But we hope that to be, for those awards to continue. This does predate the current Trump administration. So when we first started this program, it was to really make sure that Hawaii benefits from some of those post-COVID stimulus and assistance federal funding programs. With the new administration at the federal level, you might ask, has it changed? Our take on it is it's all the more important for local government and frankly our nonprofit partners as well to continue to strengthen their grant writing muscles so they don't atrophy. Also, there are still those opportunities that are out there right now. Some of it might take reframing those grant applications. For example, in the energy sector, you want to focus on reduction on dependence of foreign fossil fuels or dependence, just a bit of a pivot there. And
Keith, can you talk about some the experts that you have that came from Seaworm as well?
Oh yeah, within the water sector, we're fortunate to have hired within Ulupono, so within Ulupono's team, Jeremy Kimura, who used to work at the Commission on Water Resource Management, Seaworm. He has led, in his year and a half at Ulupono, we've just completed a systems map of water in Hawaii, fresh water in Hawaii. And we've landed we've identified about, I want to say 8 or so high leverage opportunities within our water system. We've prioritized 3 for ourselves. I'm sure Jeremy would be happy to present the full systems map to anybody who might be interested. In fact, I think we could just provide that as well and follow it up with a presentation. But what we found in our water system is, not a surprise. It's very siloed in terms of our water system. Each county has its own issues when it comes to fresh water. They're very different. There is a lack of understanding of our water system amongst the resident population. It's sort of like energy in that you flick on a switch and it works. Well, you turn on the faucet and it works, and it's only a problem until it doesn't work well. So again, yeah, happy to provide additional details on that.
What's that?
Yeah.
So I have a quick question, if I can.
Okay, hold on, trustee. Okay, so just to be clear, you're going to be submitting a memo of understanding for us to consider with Ulupono.
Right, so the MOU it's informational only. I mean, there's no decision-making required from the board.
Yeah, okay.
And so you have a copy of that in front of you. And
Yeah.
basically, if you're looking at pages 1 through 3, most of it is what Ulupono is bringing forward to the partnership. And OHA's agreements are really at the bottom of page 3.
Okay.
And there are only 3 things that they're asking us to do, and that's to be an open and willing partner to receive their service, and to acknowledge that at any point in time, Ulupono can terminate the agreement as well.
Okay.
So,
I'd
All right.
add to that, the purpose of the MOU too is it provides the framework or the mechanism by which a government agency can accept what is a gift of service.
Sure.
We've tried this in the past, and it's actually been hard to actually provide a gift of service to the state in some instances. So this has been something that, this agreement is modeled off of the one that we have signed with the governor's office.
Okay, got it. Okay, let's go to Trustee Ahuna. Your question?
Yes, thank you. I'm so sorry for bothering you. It was just something that you mentioned. I couldn't really hear. You guys are partnering, or you working with the person in DC? What was his name again?
Andy Weiner.
Was he a former congressional guy?
Yeah, he believed, or he worked within one of the congressional offices
Yeah, he was the chief of staff for, was it Schatz?
most recently.
Andy Weiner. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, very good. Trustees, any other questions? No? Okay, well, we certainly appreciate you coming, because the last time we couldn't get you on. You were
I was
actually
there, but
virtual.
I couldn't get the audio to work.
Okay, very good. Well, coming personally, we appreciate that.
Sure. Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
Oh, wait, hold on. Vice Chair.
Aloha Ki.
Aloha.
It's very good to see you. We used to work together.
Yes.
So we're familiar with each other. I just want to mahalo you for this opportunity and Ulupono looking to partner with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs to better the conditions of our Hawaiian people and our community as a whole. And I'm interested to see what's more to come and how we can collaborate regarding providing grant writing services for our community and the workshops that we do. Maybe that's another way in which that we can further partner.
Yeah, I look forward to the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Trustees? Oh, Chair Hulu?
Are you folks a nonprofit?
We're not, we're actually set up as an LLC. And that goes back to our originally being established as an impact investment firm. Although over the last 15 years, we've grown much beyond that, where we provide more grants than we do investment dollars at this point. We've grown a communications team and a very active government affairs policy team.
So just to clear my mind, your job as a company applies for grants and then gives it out to whoever is applying through you, and maybe you're taking a fee off the top. I mean, how do you survive is what I want to know.
Sure. We would, a lot of people would describe us as a funder or a philanthropic organization, although we are much beyond that. We're fortunate to get our funding from Pierre and Pam Midyar. And Pierre Midyar is the founder of eBay.
Yes, I know him.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, essentially we're a way for Pam and Pierre, and Pam still sits on our board, and Pierre is a founding member of our board.
I see.
They raised their family in Hawaii, and they just want to give back. We're one of many organizations across the world where they're trying to do that.
Well, thank you. Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we refer this memorandum of understanding to our board counsel to review on our behalf.
That's fine. Sure, let's do that. Okay. Going forward, if there's nothing else that you'd like to add, we'll certainly take this under consideration.
One more
Oh,
question.
okay. Yeah. Trustee Ahuna.
I just wanted to like to know who is on your the experts on your water team?
Jeremy, we hired him about Jeremy Kimura. He's our director within the water sector. We also have some consultant contracts with, one is Kristen Reynolds. I don't know if you might know her, but she's pretty engaged across the water sector within Hawaii. Her organization is One Water, One World, I believe. Very good. But through our water systems mapping exercise, that entailed Jeremy sitting down with folks across the state. So he's growing his network, and you know, we at Ulupono, we're a fairly small team, total of 14 people, but across 4 sectors that gets really tight. My role there is communications and external affairs, so I oversee the communications and policy team essentially. We have an investment team. But Jeremy within Ulupono is our water expert, if that answers the question.
Trustee Ahuna, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Trustee Hulu?
I just want to be clear to myself. So does Ulupono come under a parent company?
No, we're set up as an independent LLC. We do get funding from the Omidyar group, but we report only to our board of directors.
Okay, thank you.
As I recall, this is Pam's project, right?
Yes, she's
More
on our
than
board.
Pierre.
Pierre is no longer on our board. He was one of our founding board members, but Pam remains on our board. We have a board of 3.
We'll take our aloha to them from the board over here. And you're dropping some heavy names. Melissa Hamp, she comes out with that monthly grant opportunities list, very vibrant. And of course, Andy knows how to navigate the federal landscape.
Yes.
Okay. Trustees, any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. Mahalo.
Thank you for your time. Mahalo.
Very good. Okay, let's continue on. We have 4 presentations today. We're into number 2. I'd like to ask Stacy to introduce our next presenters, please.
Mahalo, Chair. At this time, I'd like to ask from the Native Hawaiian Legal Corp to have Makalika Naholowaʻa, their Executive Director, come and share their annual report.
Okay, welcome. Pull up a chair. Somebody gets the big chair too.
Primary speaker. We'll face that towards you so you can see your presentation.
Welcome.
Aloha, mahalo, trustees, for having us here. Just quick introductions, but I know we don't have much time, so I'll try to be brief. But I'm Makalika Naholowaʻa, the Executive Director at NHLC. I've been in this role. This is my 4th year. And then with me, I've got our most senior legal staff. So we have our Litigation Director, Kirsha Durante. We have Angela Correa-Pei, who is of Counsel, and she leads the Family Law Program, which was our newest program added to our services with partnership from OHA last year, so I wanted to make sure she had a chance to speak. I also want to acknowledge Charla Manley, who's an of counsel, who is on her 2nd tour of duty with NHLC, and she's leading our response to the Maui wildfires and recovery efforts. So if there's questions about that, I wanted to make sure she was on hand too. So that's the staff that's here, but if we could go to the next slide. Actually, could we go one forward? This is a little out of order, but could we go to the 3rd? These are the folks that are not necessarily with us in the room, but this is our organization. We've got a board of 12, all Native Hawaiian leaders in the community that we're very fortunate to have serving as volunteers. And then we have our staff. We're a staff of 16, 10 of us are attorneys, and then we have, paralegal intake, support staff that are also really critical as legal professionals for the work. So now could we go back to slide 1? I'll also note that we handed out printed longer versions of our annual report that were put at everyone's chair. So most of the this is a condensed version on the slides, but if you want to refer to any of this, it's in the booklet. And for anybody on the phone, that's also available on our website, hopefully pretty easy to find on the front page. So in a nutshell, just want to make sure that I know that the trustees actually are very familiar with NHLC, but also want to make sure that anybody new to staff or on the phone just has a quick introduction to who we are as an organization. So NHLC celebrated 50 years of service to the Lahui last year. So we're very privileged to have been able to do this work for now. We're on our 4th generation of advocates at the firm. And we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We were really founded, probably with the help of some people in this room, actually, even 50 years ago, thinking through how to help Native Hawaiians who were being dispossessed of land at scale. So land is really our foundation where we started. And we'll show more data about what the work looks like today. The work has definitely diversified as Native Hawaiian rights have matured and developed, but actually keeping Hawaiians on their land remains more than 50% of our practice. So that root continues to be a need and continues to be where we, at least by quantity of volume of work, where we spend the most of our resources. That said, with the evolution of Native Hawaiian rights over the last 15 years, there's more than land that our people need in order to continue to live in Native Hawaiian ways. And so our practice has evolved to ensure that where legal services are needed to protect those rights, those advocates are there. So when you look at who do we serve, often people have questions about what's the borders of the legal work that we do and work that we don't do. So the easiest way for me to explain it is to look at the hat that you might be wearing in your life when that legal issue arises. So we are counsel for cultural practitioners. So if there's a legal issue coming up that's a barrier, or maybe even there's an opportunity for the law to be enabling of your traditional and customary Native Hawaiian practices, that's squarely an NHLC area of law. If there's an issue having to do with the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, which usually when you look at the work that we're doing, it's representing families who are at risk of losing their lease or struggling with intergenerational handoff with successorships, things of that nature, we could do that. But it's also looking more systemically at whether or not the government is doing its duties as trustees when it comes to Hawaiian homelands. So Hawaiian Homes Commission Act is another area that once that's, if that's involved, that would be squarely within NHLC's expertise. Family landowners. So this is an area that is not necessarily Native Hawaiian branded in the law, but we know as Hawaiians is very much a Hawaiian issue. So things having to do with quiet title, it matters where land is being potentially partitioned, land's being encroached upon, easement issues. So things that help families to maintain their land intergenerationally and stop infringement on their property rights is also squarely within work that we've done and really what we were founded to do. Cultural property stewards as well. So, when we're talking about Vahipana, Iwi Kapuna, so things having to do with protecting sacred places and in culturally significant places, also within our wheelhouse, that's going to be a combination of federal and state law. And then the newest program, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that Angela has joined us to lead, is family law. Again, not necessarily a Native Hawaiian branded area of law like some of our practice areas, but nevertheless very much a Native Hawaiian issue because Native Hawaiian children are way overrepresented in the children that are removed from their family homes, often leading to very serious consequences for Native Hawaiian identity in their lineage for the rest of time. So we are now also active in how do we help families who are in crisis and are becoming justice impacted or court system impacted. So that is sort of the scope. And then, our goals below, sort of as we do this work, what is it really to achieve? And this slide just also summarizes our strategic plan and the 5 goals that we are focused on with all of this work. So if we could go to the next slide, I think it's the next one after that. Okay, so this is a very broad body of legal work, and we have provided some data in the report and in these slides. It's more than 500 legal matters. So a legal matter is essentially a household, although some of these legal matters we're representing huis of practitioners. And so, you know, it's not exactly an easy formula, but when we say we encounter about 500 legal matters or requests for help in a year, that's roughly 500 households. And it's a very diverse body of legal work. So our attorneys are roughly organized into these programs. So something that we've really focused on in the last few years is how to take a menu board of legal jargon of services, you know, trust, quiet title, breach of trust duties, these kinds of things, but actually form them into programs that are really grounded in culture and culturally appropriate outcomes. So this slide is just showing what those 6 programs look like to achieve and do the work that I talked about at the previous slide. So Olana Iwi, we're here to protect the Pilina in Ohana to themselves, to the Lahui, and to the Aina. And that's really where our family law work is done. That program is really a cradle to grave service in the sense that we also think about the Pilina to our kupuna. And so our Iwi kupuna work falls under that Olana Iwi program. Ihonua Ola, homestead and family rights, keeping people on their lands. Kanehoka Iwi, that program was started because of the massive need caused by the Lahaina wildfires, but actually, I think as everyone in the room knows, Hawaii is no stranger to natural disasters. Something that NHLC realized in the wake of that disaster is that there's a lot of Native Hawaiian issues that come up, but we were not organized to build, we're not organized to service that as rapidly as we need to be, given the future prospect of disaster in Hawaii in the future. So at this time, Maui is really the focus, but actually our goal is to try to maintain capacity for disaster law and disaster recovery and resilience long term, because we know, unfortunately, it's unlikely to be the last. And so we're really fortunate to have Charla doing that work. Manaka Viola, water rights. I think that speaks for itself. And then, you know, the Wahipana work and our traditional knowledge and practice protection work. And something on the Ohuaho program with traditional knowledge and practice protection also increasingly looks like intellectual property work, because a lot of our practitioners are noticing abuse in that realm, and access to intellectual property counseling and representation is actually pretty scarce in the civil legal world nationally. But for Indigenous people who have faced just rampant exploitation and treatment of our cultures as basically free in the public domain, it's really critical that we have that access to maintain our cultural integrity. So that's another vector where there's been some growth and evolution in our programs in recent years, even for folks that are probably very familiar with NHLC's work. I would say the family law program and the traditional knowledge programs have been seeing some change. And then disaster resilience. So if we were to walk away with what's the 3 kind of newer things that have been happening, those are 3 areas where we're seeing a lot of change and we're evolving to try to meet the need. Okay. Oh, could we have the next slide? Okay, so we're going to get into stories of individuals because I think that's more will help to give color to the work, but just wanted to give one more slide that's sort of a forest for the trees, because it is a pretty significant body of work, and every matter has a story that won't surprise everyone, whether it's, you know, defending a sacred mauna or defending a family home that people have lived in for 3 or 4 generations. Every single one of these matters is a story, and we could spend an hour talking about each of them. So I just want to acknowledge that and not diminish it, while we're at the same time talking about hundreds of, you know, what can easily start feeling like nameless, faceless matters, but that's definitely not the case. So that said, we do regularly, at this point, we are regularly getting post-pandemic more than 500 calls a year for help. Not everything needs or should become litigation. On the litigation side, we are regularly carrying between 100 and 120 active litigation matters, which means we're retained, we're representing families or practitioners or community members before decision makers, whether that be agencies, state or federal courts. So that's what it looks like when we say we have a case. One of the things that we do, because we think it's so important to be able to talk to impact and tell beneficiaries and this body how we're being stewards of the investment that's made into us is actually we're a rare civil legal aid organization that we actually do intense timekeeping. That's very rare for a civil legal aid organization to do, but we do it. So I'm able to give you folks also metrics on what does that mean in terms of actual attorney time spent. And we've actually integrated that into the OHA contract at our request so that there was greater accountability in what we're serving. So I'm also really proud of how productive our attorneys are, frankly, because they work really hard. And we also are doing as many hours as we do providing direct legal services to one of these matters. Our attorneys are also doing things that are, not on a specific matter, but to advance justice for the Lahui, whether that's presentations where we're educating other lawyers in the community and nationally as to what Native Hawaiian rights are and what they require, whether that's being, at community events, helping our community to understand their rights. So there's a lot of work that happens as a complement to the core representation of families. And that's all in addition to the metrics that we're sharing today. The other thing that I wanted to share on the data side, well, one, just noting that we provide quarterly reports as well to OHA staff. So we try to provide a pretty steady stream of data, both qualitative and quantitative results. So this is just a couple of data points that you might find useful to measuring the need, but also the impact of this program. Like I mentioned earlier, the big circle slide is showing by program area, where's the volume of matters. So like I mentioned before, more than half of the matters that we work on are keeping families in their homes and on their family lands. That said, that does not mean that that's the divide of level of effort. So for example, when you look at Manukau Waiʻola, 3.3% of our matters last year were water rights, but we actually staff all of these programs roughly equivalently. So there's a different cut that you could look at, which is how many matters, but then how many hours do these things take, right? So a water case is going to be a very intense, often it would not be surprising to see a water case take more than 10 years. Whereas you're hoping that you're going to resolve a family's issue with their homestead or their land within months, not years. Years is possible, but you're thinking months, not years. So want to make sure that these data slides are useful, but at the same time, don't paint the wrong picture about where's the investment going and how are we spending our time. But I think when you look at volume of families who are involved in needing justice services, definitely it's still about homes and land. Also, I know that everyone represents different parts of the Pai'aina, so wanted to show a graph that lays out the matters by location where are people. So I think unsurprisingly, Hawaii Island and Oahu are leaders on matters, but honestly, at this point, what we're seeing is just need in all the places. And I don't, Maui, I think you could easily look at, the need caused by the wildfires. So that would be no surprise. But Kauai, I mean, at about 50 matters last year compared to 150 for Hawaii, Oahu, and Maui, that's a smaller amount. But I mean, that's a lot for that population of Native Hawaiian families on that island. And we're seeing a rise. So, we're not happy to see that people have rising need. That's not a good thing. People are usually not having a good day when they realize they need a lawyer. And then at the same time, happy to report that although we don't have offices in every island, we really are focused on how to provide services for everybody. And our staff travels quite a bit to ensure that we can meet them where they are and appear before the courts and the agencies that are required to meet their needs. So that's data. I wanted to give the mic to Kirsha now to talk a little bit more specifics about some cases to provide color on the work. Should we wait? Do you have questions for me now, or would you like to just wait? And
Is your presentation long? Is it? Okay. Well, before we move forward, I failed to ask for if there was any questions from.
No testifiers at this time.
Okay, very good. Okay, please proceed.
Aloha. Okay, it's working. Can we go to the next slide, please? So while we're doing that, just to expand on what Makalika was sharing about servicing Pai'aina, this map is really just a snapshot of the work that we do on all the different islands. So this list that you see coming out of each of the islands is in no way exhaustive, but it does give an idea of the diversity of work that we have on each island and across the state. Also, it's reflective of the need on all the different islands. As Makalika was talking about, we're largely Oahu based. We have one attorney that is based on Hawaii Island, but the rest of us are based on Oahu. And we travel in order to ensure that representation is provided and afforded to everyone on all the different islands that need our assistance. In the below corner, you see that a reference to statewide matters. So another thing that's when you're looking at this map is this map doesn't reflect all of the work on the different islands that we are currently serving that includes statewide efforts. So when we're talking about DHHL successorship issues or defending against lease cancellations, that's a statewide effort. It's happening on all islands. Birthing practices or just the protection of traditional and customary practices in general. That's something happening across all different islands. And then family legal services, of course, our most recent program that we've added happening on all the different islands. So, you know, this map, I think, really highlights the diverse nature of our work. But I think one thing it's not able to capture in this picture is really the diversity of skill that's required to handle these types of cases. When we're looking at these matters, they span from administrative proceedings before federal and state agencies, circuit court matters, district court matters, family court matters, and appellate level matters. And each of those different areas of advocacy require different types of skill. They require understanding of different rules and procedures. And just given the distinct nature of the different communities we serve, it takes an understanding of how to best assist that community and their priorities. So it really is a unique, specialized skill that our attorney staff has developed in order to best serve our community, our lahui. We can go to the next slide. This slide is, a compilation of the different stories. A lot of them are in the annual report that the trustees have. And for those listening online or those that don't have a hard copy of it, it's also available on our website. So feel free to visit our website and you can view it there. And you'll see that there's quotes. I'm not going to read all of the quotes, but I think the major takeaway when you read them is that all of these individuals felt heard. And they felt like their needs were met through the efforts of our attorneys. And, Makalika had mentioned just sharing a little bit about maybe some cases. So, I'll focus on the Castro Ohana, and that's the Ohana that's on the bottom right on my screen. So this Ohana right here. And why I want to focus on that is, we could say that this was a case where we helped them to open probate. And if you just look at it from that context and that characterization, maybe it doesn't seem that meaningful. But this was an ohana that lost their family home in Lahaina during the fire. The home was still under the name of grandmother, so 2 generations back. When there was the time for the cleanup to happen and the county was offering free cleanup for all of the different properties that were affected, in order to do that, you needed to sign a right of entry, authorizing the county to come in and do that. And if you weren't able to do that, then you would have to either use your insurance funding or your own money to pay for that cleanup. And this is environmental cleanup to make sure that rebuilding can occur. They weren't able to do that because there was no person who was the owner of that property. A probate was needed and the appointment of a personal representative, which is basically someone who is going to take the role and stand in the shoes of the person who has deceased in order to administrate or distribute their estate, which can include their ownership interest in the property. The probate was critical for that family in order to follow through with that. It was also critical for other families in Lahaina to have an appointment of a personal representative in order to access insurance funds, which was needed in order to secure housing, in order to have the potential for rebuild. So there were a lot of things that we could step back and just say, well, this is a probate matter. But how do you quantify what it means to have generational stability in land for an ohana? So that's an example of the type of work that NHLC does. Shifting to the middle photo. There's a photo of 4 men. This is the Lu'uwai Ohana from Maui. And why I want to point this out is because Makalika talked about 50 years that our organization was in existence. This Ohana, the prior generation, had come to our office for assistance in preserving their right to exercise their traditional fishing rights in an area that became a state preserve on the island of Maui. So because it was a reserve, there was no fishing that was allowed, but this was an area that this ohana for generations had fished, had unique and particularized knowledge about their traditional fishing practices there. And the only way that that could be perpetuated with the younger generations, the appeal was to be able to engage in those practices. So they came to NHLC in the late 1990s for the first time to ask for assistance in getting a special use permit in order to be able to fish there. NHLC assisted them at that time. It took years as some of these cases, and this is not litigation. So I also want to share, there's litigation and legal representation. This was legal representation that didn't result in a case, but it was legal representation to assist them in getting a special use permit to fish in that reserve. Fast forward about 20 years later, and the next generation wants to continue to engage in this practice and utilize this process that their parents had developed, and they were told no. So they came to NHLC for assistance, and we were able to assist them, again, not through litigation, but through representation before the Board of Land and Natural Resources, it ultimately in the request for a permit. And they were successful and they were able to achieve it. But for NHL's institutional knowledge and history about this case, this could have been handled differently. It positioned us well to be able to advocate on behalf of the current generation of practitioners because of the knowledge we had from their parents. So the work, the longevity of this organization helps to add to the meaningful impact that our work can have. There's one more slide that I'll just touch on briefly, Chair, and then I promise I'll stop. So just real quick, this is takeaways, big picture takeaways. I think as Makalika touched on, land continues to be an issue and a focus of our work. One major, component or function of NHLC is its existence ensures accountability for government agencies. Some government agencies will simply choose to do what is pono and consistent with the law because they know if they don't, NHLC is there to point that out. The risk of criminalization of traditional and cultural practices, that has arisen. I've appeared in front of this committee before to advocate for its support of the midwifery bill that was threatening the criminalization of birthing practitioners. That's one example of that increase, and NHLC has been responsive to that in trying to, where we can, challenge the law to make sure it's not interpreted in a way that criminalizes practitioners. Advocate for changes in the law where it can be used to expand protections for practitioners. And candidly, when there's been challenges to individual practitioners, although this isn't work that's covered within the OHA's contract, we have expanded and stretched in order to accommodate defense at the practitioner level of individuals charged because they're engaging in practices. So charged with crimes, because they're engaging in practices. So, just large takeaways, there are some things that are changing and we're being responsive to those needs. Obviously, we are aware that there are topics on the horizon, expiring military leases. Federal policy has been changing. What are the impacts on the community that we serve and our ability to discharge our services? Over incarceration and the pipeline to prison, again, NHLC engages in other efforts aside from the litigation efforts. One of the pieces of work that we're working on is also trying to build in ways systemic change in order to reduce that over incarceration of our Native Hawaiian community. And of course, the wildfire recovery that Makalika's already touched on.
Well, you're touching all the right points, that's for sure. I think, in the interest of time, we have 2 more presentations and I'd like to get to Q&A. And I know that you were going to present something, or I would like to invite you back to complete the story.
No, I can just add real quick about our family law.
You want to press that on? Put it on.
I can just add real briefly about our family law program. We've been in effect since last February, thanks to funding from you folks. And the purpose of starting that program was really to fill that need for Native Hawaiian families in the foster care system that need representation. And we have been getting those cases referred to us by family court. Here on circuit court, there are 3 court-appointed counsel for parents. And now that we are taking these cases, we are the 4th. And we are serving Native Hawaiian families, so we know we are filling a much-needed gap to help our families who are in the system get out of the system quicker, and also to ensure that they have reunification with their children. And if reunification is not possible, how do we ensure that those children are placed with ohana and remain connected to lahui and to their aina and to their ohana? We are also doing legal guardianships so that kupuna can maintain taking care of their mo'opuna that they've been taking care of for years. We're doing conservatorships so that ohana can receive their DHHL successorships. So these are conservatorships for minors as well as incapacitated adults. And we are servicing all islands throughout for all of these kinds of cases. And it's growing. We're getting more and more referrals from family court. I just got 2 last week. So I know we're going to continue to grow. And I know that the ohana that we are serving are very grateful to have us alongside of their alongside
Mahalo
of
for your
them.
work. We're going to take some Q&A and then Pau. Trustee Kaele, you have something to ask?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and mahalo, Makalika and NHLC for your presentation. I have one question and then I have a follow-up. Do you know, or can you inform the board of how much general fund revenues NHLC received in this most recent annual general fund appropriation for the state's budget?
Yes, yes. Could we move 2 slides up? So it's the contract that we have provides $1.25 million of funding to NHLC for beneficiary services. And that's the way that it's structured. It's 50% from legislative funds and 50% from OHA. So that's the divide and the practices that we have entered into 2-year contracts. So actually our current contract is ending in June, and we are going to compete for the next contract and hope that that continues. And then just to give some perspective on what our resource needs are. So our operating expenses for this year are $2.4 million. To maintain all the things that we've been talking about, we will need to at least have that much for the next fiscal year. And at that amount of investment by OHA, it's just over 50% of what we need to operate.
Okay, so for clarification though, what you received from the state legislature in this past budget was again 600 million exactly, or did that number increase or decrease in this budget, which we historically match, but did you receive that again this year?
I might need Everett's assistance to know where we landed in this legislative session, but I thought it was the same. I'm looking over. Yeah, and it doesn't come to us directly. It's in OHA's budget bill, and then OHA contracts with 2 years. Yep.
Okay, it was my understanding that the legislature appropriates a portion of the general fund appropriation, and then it is matched by OHA. And in previous years, that match was a proviso match in the state budget bill in the OHA budget. This year, there are no provisos for OHA's budget, the $3 million that we receive. And I guess one of the follow-up, so if we can verify that, I think that's important, especially if we have a new contract renegotiation in June. And the other reason is I'm not concerned, but I did want to bring up, and I'm glad the previous speaker just had a chance to talk about the family law services, is because I want to ensure that OHA's resources are being utilized for beneficiary services that are speak to the specialization of expertise that NHLC can provide and has historically provided regarding ahupua'a and kuleana tenant rights and all the traditional customary practices, protection of significant places and EV, kupuna, and those types of issues, and that we're not expanding too broadly into things like family legal services, which I don't discount are very important, but there's only so much resources that we have. There's no shortage of family law lawyers in the bar that could also provide this this level of work. And since those provisos do not exist in this current budget appropriation for OHA, I want to make sure that our resources are going to where they need to go, and we're not expanding too broadly into other areas that can be served and that do need to be served, but can be served from other resources and through other legal means, not NHLC.
Yeah,
Is
you
that
want to
okay?
respond?
Yeah, I think Angela wants to mention something, and then so we're very respectful of OHA's need to think through how you do programs, and we're grateful to have received the funding that we get. And this, and I think there's a fair question in that remark about, well, who else does this work? So actually, the work that we do in the family law program, we are not aware of other civil legal aid providers doing it. So there's many lawyers who could be hired to actually do any of the work that we do. But in terms of who's doing it at pro bono, consistent, where we are a shop that you can go to as an alternative to NHLC, there's contours between what legal aid, as an example, does in the family law realm, for example, uncontested divorces, and what our program is about, which is about representing families, parents, and grandparents and aunties and uncles as needed to keep their families together in a child welfare services context. They're not the same kind of work. So that's always evolving, to be honest. I mean, it's of course possible that other providers could change and they could evolve. So I can't control that, but that is our understanding of the landscape at this point. And we don't hold work that other providers like legal aid could do. Legal aid is a vastly better funded and resourced organization than us. So one of the things that I've shared before, but it's been about a year since I think I've met with you folks, we do not get access to the largest fund of public funding because we stand with our Lahui when it comes to incarcerated people's rights and class action suits when that is necessary to happen. So organizations like Legal Aid, as an example, are funded from the federal pool, but you cannot get those funds if you stand with prisoners for their spiritual practice rights. It is a hard carve out. So there are a lot of dynamics that affect access to justice for the Lahui and the specific work that our people need. So I want to let Angela talk more about whether or not there's an overlap, but I think the bottom line is there actually isn't an overlap that we're aware of between the work that we do and the work that other nonprofit law firms are doing in Hawaii.
Go ahead, Angie.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, yes, the private bar for family law, there's divorces, custody battles. That's definitely for the private bar. Our focus is the child welfare cases, or those cases that we're trying to prevent Ohana from going into child welfare. There are only 3 court-appointed counsel here on Oahu. The judiciary did a big push 2 years ago to get more attorneys to service that area, and they just don't have them. And we know that Native Hawaiian families are overrepresented in this system. Foster care leads to incarceration, and that's why we are servicing this area. And there are not the attorneys in the private family bar that want to go in this area because the money's not there.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much. I also want to invite all trustees to go directly to Makalika. It's okay. Just, you accept calls, don't you? Okay. Trustee Alapa?
Yes, hi. So as a former foster mother, I wanted to know, what is the percentage of our Hawaiian people, especially our young foster children, that are in the prison system?
I don't know the exact data, but it's around 50% or 47 point something percent. It's high.
Yeah, when we mentioned about the over-incarceration, actually, we think of the family law program as directly responsive to the over-incarceration problem because it is so well known nationally in Hawaii that the biggest the pipeline to prison starts in foster care.
Yeah. Anybody else? Trustees? Trustee Hulu?
I've received quite a few calls from our beneficiaries that have gone to your agency and you've told them that you folks are in conflict of interest. What do we do with those beneficiaries if we can't help them?
If we have an ethical barrier to representing, and I will say that Hawaii has some of the strictest laws when it comes rules for attorneys. So in other states, there are sometimes rules that will allow you to screen lawyers and say if there's a conflict, as long as you don't look at it, you can work on it. Hawaii is not set up that way, and that's outside of our control. But I think advocacy, one of my goals is that we advocate for those kinds of changes, at least for civil legal aid providers like us in Hawaii. But that's the rule that we have. So when it happens, our practice is that we let the beneficiary know that we can provide them with a letter so that they can then work with OHA staff. And the way that my understanding the program is, but this would be more in Everett or Stacy's wheelhouse, but my understanding is that the protocol at OHA is that the other legal service providers that respond to OHA's RFP every year to get on the list of approved vendors can then be looked to as possible alternative counsel. But that at that point, it becomes up to OHA whether to give them to someone else. We also will do our best in conflict situations. Something that is hard is lawyers are really not encouraged to refer people directly to alternative counsel. The reason for that is because there's suspicion that if you have a conflict, why would I trust you to tell me the best lawyer to help me? Now, would we ever have a negative intention? Of course not. But that's the thinking and the rationale behind it. So when somebody calls and they need something that we don't do because it's not on that list, we also will do everything we can to connect them to alternative counsel. When it's a conflict situation, because let's say, for example, we're representing already a parent in a family and something is like that could happen. It usually won't actually, because we are also very careful about inter-Hawaiian family disputes, but conflicts do sometimes happen. When that happens, we will point them to the Hawaii Bar as well because they have a free attorney referral service. So we try to get them to OHA resources and we try to get them to the Bar Association to find alternative counsel.
Okay, listen, because of the importance of this conversation, I'm gonna let it roll a little longer. Okay, you guys are good for that? And for those who are gonna be doing presentations next, please consider this conversation. Okay, Trustee Akaka.
I have a couple questions, and one of them is similar to what Trustee Hula Lindsay was asking in terms of when it comes to conflict. On average, annually, how many are you receiving where you have to turn away what would have been clients?
I would say probably less than 15. And if you think about how many inquiries we get a year, which I believe is over 100, probably 150. I mean, it's a minimal amount, but I recognize though that those are the individuals whose needs are not met. And they're the individuals that we are sometimes referring to OHA for assistance or other agencies like Makalika said. So those may be the ones that you hear from. But the reality is it's actually a very small amount of the amount of calls and requests for assistance that we get.
I do, but maybe if she wants. If it has to do, but if it has to do with this, yeah.
And we also have a grievance policy. So if people want that to be further reviewed, I mean, we're not a large organization, so it's not as if there's a lot of different layers that you can really climb. But we do have a grievance policy, and I will get involved as needed. And we also will bring things to the board as appropriate if there is. I mean, I'm trying to even think about an example where it really required that amount of noodling, but I've had no grievances actually filed, although we're very liberal in making sure people are aware of it. I've had no grievances in the last year, although certainly people who are not getting the service that they were hoping to get are disappointed, and we really try to avoid it.
But Chair, I want to ask our Corp Counsel if there've been any referrals, let's say in the last year. I happen to know of a case that never got helped. And it was referred to us and before your time, Stacy. But I want to ask now, do we have any pending referrals from Native Hawaiian legal courts to help any of our people?
Everett, come forward, please.
Good morning, trustees. I don't recall any off the top of my head, at least within the last year or so. I could be mistaken. Nothing's coming to the top of my head at the moment.
Okay, so it kind of means to me then that you folks didn't refer them to us, because I've gotten calls this year, I mean, in the last 12 months. And I mean, people that so flustered, they don't know what to do because they were just depending on your help and they didn't get it. And so they're turning to us, what do we do now? You know, so that's the kind of problem that OHA can have um, um, in this whole situation. So we need to put our heads together so that that doesn't happen to our people.
Trustee Lindsay, if I could just clarify one thing. When we say we refer them, we provide them with a letter that gives the information to contact OHA. So there, and sometimes we do an informal notice to, I know we've sent emails to Everett, just FYI, we have referred this individual for assistance. I'm not sure if that's happened in the past year, but generally the mechanism is a letter to the individual. So it may not be NHLC calling on their behalf, but them calling could be the result of the letter we've sent them to contact OHA about the services.
Although I will take it, I fully take it on board, the feedback. I think that, you know, if ever it's willing, we should work on process. And we've had this conversation before, actually, that there's often confusion too in the community about what is NHLC, what's OHA, what's the difference between the two, because some folks think that we're just a department of OHA, actually, which is of course not true. But I mean, we're happy to make that experience as smooth as we can, so far as essentially having that experience make sense. So I think that there just needs to be some refinement as to what OHA actually wants the message to be, frankly. Like, does OHA want the message to be, if NHLC is conflicted, they will do their best to get you alternative counsel? If that's the message, it hasn't been clear. So we will absolutely work in those small percentage of cases where it happens. We want to have a good process and we want to have good answers.
Makalika,
So,
that's why you guys are here today,
yeah.
because there's been a lack of clarity. And now information goes two ways. Now you know how we're feeling, and we know how you feel. So I think the sooner we get together with our council, iron things out, the better.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Trustee, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Trustee Akaka, last one.
Mahalo, yes. So mahalo for your work regarding Ea Hanau and all the good things you do. So there's some things I'm trying to locate. So one of them being that given that we provide funding to you, I'm trying to find beyond the Ulu report, OHA's name, OHA's logo on your website. And I say this to you because we provide so much in terms of funding and services throughout the Pai'aina and beyond. However, OHA's name and OHA's work gets lost along the way because there is a disconnect there. So if we're not getting the proper sharings that we're a part of what you're providing, then that doesn't help us be able to help you. And on top of that, I'm trying to also locate testimony from you, whether it's at the legislature and counties, in terms of when it comes to our budget bills and when it comes to our PL2 working group, our inventory, our pro rata share. I'm trying to locate testimony in support from you folks. And if you are not providing that, because I'm not able to locate that, why is that?
So in terms of acknowledgement of OHA as a very substantial, like sustaining funder for NHLC. So first, absolutely that is the case, has been the case for a long time. Actually, out of care for all the different organizations that want your help, we actually are doing as best as we can to diversify our funding sources and become less dependent, because we don't want to take from that pot if you guys could fund other people. So we are working hard on that as well, but that is definitely true, and we mahalo OHA enormously for that. In terms of acknowledgement, I am very open to feedback on how that could look different. So that's another thing that we can take as a note to discuss with your staff about how that should look. I think that, you know, staff might also have opinions about the necessary distinction that OHA is interested in, though, at the same time, because the legal work, our duty is not to the funder, frankly, it's to the client. And so once we take the client on, we have attorney ethical duties to zealously advocate for the client. And so, that's another thing where the cultural sensitivity in addition to the legal skill is necessary. But I think that might require some of the thinking too, is how does OHA actually want to be acknowledged versus maintaining a distinct identity? Because once we start advocating for the clients, maybe it's actually in OHA's preference that it not be viewed as the voice of OHA, because it's really the advocacy that the client wants to get done. OHA doesn't get to control what arguments they want to make and what they want to settle, not settle. And so because there's so much about it that OHA is not permitted to control, I think that's part of the distinction. But that doesn't mean that we can't improve.
So everyone's chomping at the bit over there. What do you want to say?
Thank you. But I nothing to, discount for what Makalika had mentioned and the considerations for OHA and this board. I would maybe just add a couple of distinctions too, and in terms of the recognition piece that is often part of our funding decisions. This is, I think, important to recognize as a legal services contract that OHA contracts through a procured professional services procurement method rather than a grant from OHA. So it doesn't have that same kind of requirement that we ask of grantees to have this publicity component along with OHA funding. So it is more just like a contractor for OHA to provide these direct legal services to beneficiaries and lahui. With that, I think it's also, understood that there is no guarantee that NHLC will be selected as the direct legal services provider for future contracts. So in terms of the budget bill, I think there is a consideration that they don't want to be presumed to be the one funded by this contract because there is a future procurement that occurs. Not to say, again, anything to discount, NHLC's ability and, past history of providing these services. But I also am, I think, at least cognizant of not wanting to presuppose that they're going to be selected, or maybe that they would also, assert that as much through public testimony.
Yeah, and then but that said, on policy advocacy, I mean, as a C3 organization, we also closely monitor how much lobbying we can do. We don't lobby very much, to be honest. I mean, so we are registered as lobbyists with the Hawaii Ethics Commission because it's a very low bar to qualify as a lobbyist in Hawaii, and we want to be compliant always in all things that we do. So we are technically registered as a lobbyist, but it is very minimal. That doesn't mean that we can't be working more with folks like Lena Ala and your advocacy team to figure out where would it actually be a make sense place for NHLC to ring in, because we do more than zero. We're just very thoughtful about it, honestly and transparently, for multiple reasons. One, because of the work that we do representing, the lahui in situations where it's often not politically popular, frankly, query how helpful it is sometimes if we were to ring in. But if the staff believes that it is, I mean, I've never turned down a call to talk with ALHA's chief advocate, GC staff. So if there is something we can do to be a better contributor to the lahui within the scope of what we do, we want to do it.
Mahalo. Well, I feel that if we're contracting 1.25 plus million in beneficiary services, that does go hand in hand, as in the recent past years, if we're receiving 15.1 million from the legislature, that's a fair amount from that 15.1 that we're receiving annually. So I think that would render a voice in terms of support. And I don't think that would be a conflict of interest for you folks to provide that in some shape or matter. And if you're talking about on your website under About Us or somewhere in there, I think there is room for OHA to be mentioned in there, as well as others that are contributing to your success. But that's where we're at in terms of where we have to go throughout our community and share why OHA exists, why we started, Same with what you do, your mission, your strategic plan.
Mhm.
And we need to be able to share with them how we're getting lost along the way.
Mhm.
Because if you're having confusion where people think you're a department of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, we're constantly faced with people not knowing the difference between OHA and DHHL. You know, so that you supporting us vocally within the community and at the legislature and so forth,
Mhm.
it kokuas us to kokua you, because it's simple as the funding that we receive. And that goes hand in hand with the clients that you're working with in terms of land rights in general.
Mhm.
I don't see any conflict of interest there.
Mhm.
Mahalo.
You know, this is an important conversation, and I don't want to cut it short. So I did ask one of our presenters, we're going to defer. So we're buying a little bit more time for you.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to entertain one more question from Trustee Kahele, because he wanted to ask something.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thanks, Trustee Galutaria. I just wanted, before I make my comment for NHLC, I just wanted to comment since Ev came up and what he said about the procurement piece, because the reality is, though we do go through the procurement process, there is really no viable alternative provider that can do the work NHLC does at the current contract compensation amount. And if we were to look at a mid or a large size law firm to provide that, we just finished talking about conflict of interest. There would be a significant number of conflict of interest with other law firms. And so I just wanted to provide that, in my opinion, clarification. But to end on a high note, Makalika, we really appreciate and support the work that NHLC does and the work that you guys have done for over 50 years. And I was proud to go there along with, Trustee Souza and our Chair Emerita for your 50th anniversary back in August. And we want you to keep championing those really precedent-setting cases that NHLC has done for decades. I think what we can look at moving forward, especially if we are going to work with you on what that new contract looks like, is that we are able to avoid the conflicts of interest that our Chair Emerita had raised and some of the frustration that she feels and some of our beneficiaries feel because of the lack of support, by mitigating those conflict of interest by narrowing the practices that we currently provide and those services provided. Because as we expand those practices, then we have more conflict of interest. And so moving forward, I'd like to see us work together with you and on what that looks like and what OHA's role is. I know things have been done in the past, the way they've been done in the past. That's not the same OHA we have today, and that's not the OHA that we're looking to lead in the future. And so let's work together so you can continue doing the work that you do, especially in those specialized areas that NHLC has always been a champion in. And I think we can continue this great relationship that we've always had. Mahalo, Chair.
Okay, mahalo. Mahalo. One final thought?
Yeah.
Chair Hulu, okay.
I just want to speak in support of what you said as far as advocacy by Native Hawaiian Legal Corps. You know, I have some really good friends in the legislature, and one of them commented one day to me, I don't know if we should give you folks the money for NHLC. They turn around and sue us. So, you know, they are concerned that we're paying you folks to go back against them. So I can relate to something like that. But I just wanted to share that I know that's what you were referring to when you spoke of that. Mahalo. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We can find a sweet spot on working together. Okay. And you're always going to be invited to come back and share whatever we need to know, whatever you'd like for us to know. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, mahalo.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. All right. Trustees, in the interest of time, what the chair's decided to ask Kamakana to defer so that the repatriation report moves to the next meeting. And we can go directly to our legislative wrap up with Lena Allah. So Kamakana, thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate you allowing for that. Okay, so Lena Allah, she's going to be coming up. Would you like to go ahead and introduce our next and final presenter? Kapuana.
Mahalo, Chair. At this time, I'd like to ask for our Chief Advocate, Lena Alale, to come up and share with the board our 2025 legislative session wrap-up.
Good morning. I'm gonna hand out.
Hold on a second, before you get started. Do we have any testifiers? None?
No testifiers.
Okay, mahalo.
So, good morning, trustees. Mahalo for your time. Going to the first slide. I just wanted to clarify, this is a very limited scope of review. Do you want to advance to the first slide, please? We're not talking about everything that came up this legislative session or OHA's package or how we want to move forward next session. I really wanted to provide an update on bills and resolutions that were passed that require follow-up from OHA so that the trustees are aware of basically work that was put on our plates by, during the legislative session. And then we will have time further down the road after we're able to meet, obviously, with the BAE committee to talk about next session and maybe some lessons learned from this session. So that's just, so this is a very actually brief presentation. Could you, next slide, please? So the most important one, which was OHA's resolution, I think everyone knows we discussed it in the budget. It's going to have a significant amount of work on the staff side, which is why we're looking at hiring a facilitator. Again, this is the one, the working group would be up to 15 individuals from OHA, SHPD, IBCs, and the community to look at how an actual transition of duties from SHPD to OHA related to iwi kupuna protection would work. So looking at the statute, looking at operations, looking at regulations. This is a very intensive working group. The report is not due until the end of 2026. So the remainder of this year is going to be really hiring the facilitator, reaching out to the IBCs in the community so people know to apply to the working group, and then really the substance of the working group will pick up at the end of the year and go through 2026. And 2 members will be OHA staff. Most likely at this point, it would make sense to have Kamakana Ferreira and myself because there's both the operational side, and Kamakana has, the experience of how the law is implemented in practice. And then I would be looking at the policy side, which is the statutory and the regulatory changes. But, that's subject to further discussion. So that is the first and most pressing one. There was also a resolution passed related to dealing with iwi that are exposed by sea level rise and erosion along the coast. And the resolution names OHA's chairperson or designee. And there's already work taking place both with Kapuhana, the S&I team, Kamakana. They're already all talking to SHPD about how do we deal with iwi. So that I'll defer to Kapuhana about who would be the most appropriate person. But again, that's a working group that's going to get formed. It's going to have to provide reports. It's looking specifically at topics they've already addressed with SHPD about once these iwi are exposed, where can they be reinterred? How can they be handled appropriately? What is the coordination between the state and the county? So that'll be another, not quite as time intensive as the first resolution, but still a significant and important time commitment. The third resolution, this was introduced by Senator Richards. It happened to line up with plans that we already had in the advocacy division to want to do legislative engagement forums for the community, but because it's a resolution, we also have to do a report back to the ledge. And the language of the reso also has suggestions, some that might be a little broader than what we're able to implement this year about coordinating with other NHOs and providing mentorship opportunities. But I think the core of what the resolution requests we're planning to meet, and we're also going to have conversations with Senator Richards along the way so he understands what we're doing since this was his resolution. Are there any questions before we move to the next slide?
Go ahead, proceed.
So the next one, I'll be honest, I'm not really happy about it because I think it's a little premature. There's a desalination working group being set up to prepare a study on the feasibility of desalinating water to meet the state's water needs, and it requires an OHA member. I think because of this specific requirement that it look at the effect that desalination plants may have on historical sites or Native Hawaiian cultural sites and practices, I think is a little premature. Often those issues come up when you are more site specific as opposed to looking very high level at whether desalination is, economically and practically feasible. But we do have a named position on that working group as well that will be asked to fill. And then the last resolution is actually just more information. There's a working group related to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on children. And so they're going to just be reaching out to OHA to find out if this is something that we've looked at or compiled any resources on.
Who introduced SR 36? Desalination. Who introduced that one?
36. Ooh, I will have to ask someone on the staff to get back to me. I'm not sure
Okay, that's all
whose
right.
that was.
Yep.
Okay, next slide, please.
Continue.
So I have the bills last because of course the bills still need to be signed by the governor before they actually become effective, unlike the resolutions, which immediately go into effect. So everything I've spoken about up to now are things we definitely are going to have to do. The bills, we still have to see what the governor does, but these are likely to be implemented or signed by the governor. They're not particularly controversial. The first is concerning a working group about solitary confinement, and the language there says may invite OHA participation, but it's actually shall. So again, OHA will have seats or one seat on this working group. We would recommend that our staff person in advocacy who's been focusing on criminal justice would sit on this working group, as she's been tracking solitary confinement and it has familiarity with the allied organizations who are looking at this issue. And then the other bill, this one we'll have to see if the governor signs. It's a little bit complicated, actually. It remakes East-West Center to have like a private arm, an incorporated arm, so that it can receive and administer funds in a different way. And also expanding the sister state commission that exists, and tasking DBED looking more specifically, not just with cultural ties with sister states, but actually economic development. So this is one that we are interested in our participation because it fits in with the work that our S&I economic development team members are looking at doing as far as expanding economic opportunities. And one of the things that's actually talked about in the bill is looking at expanding DBED's role in establishing kind of markets with sister states, so there's more exposure for Hawaii products and Hawaii goods. And international work is also a priority of this board, so we do think it's important. So in OHA's list of nominees to the governor, we can nominate trustees or staff members so that OHA has that representation directly on that commission. So that is the last of the one that requires work from us. And the next slide, this is just a heads up. It still, again, needs to be signed by the governor. And this one would actually across the board advance the deadline for publishing board packets by 1 day. So we're keeping an eye on that to see if that is signed by the governor, as that would affect obviously how we do business here as well. It's one less day to get ready.
What is the question? What is it? Oh, I see.
For the I mean, the idea is for the public, they'll have more time to review, but we'll have to, yeah, hustle even more. So next slide, please. So those are the main bills and resos I wanted to highlight today. Again, we're looking at staffing working groups, who are the most appropriate staff members to sit on which working groups or trustees, perhaps in the case of the International Relations Commission. Again, really our focus in the next month on our side will be our resolution and making sure we can stand up that working group. I did want to give a heads up to the trustees to have this in their mind, is that we would like this year, if we can, this is a request, that we have our legislative priorities actually decided in the beginning of October, so that when we go out and do those legislative empowerment forums in the community that we're talking about, we can actually, they're about more broadly how to engage in the legislative process and election. So it's going to be, you know, a higher level educational opportunity, but also to be able to directly connect with beneficiaries about our priorities would be really, really good. So if we have our ledge priorities by October, then we'll be able to go out in the community in November and really be talking substantively about what are the bills that we're prioritizing when we're at the same time we're doing those legislative empowerment forums.
So I make up that we're going to back into this October date. So we would provide this board some key milestones and deadlines.
Okay, yeah, we
I
can
think that would be
work on
helpful for
that.
them. Yeah.
Now, between now and October, I think that it would be a wise exercise to speak directly to each trustee to find out what their priorities are.
Mhm.
And then we can hit the table with them all and figure
Mhm.
out how what we do from there. Not
Mhm.
unlike the CIP process that we're going through right now. It's not unusual for each trustee to have their own pet project, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Mahalo.
is that it?
That's it. And then we can, after we meet chair, we can have a further, you know, more extensive debrief if the trustees are interested in legislation that was looked at, or that we supported this past legislative session. But this was just to kind of give you an update on our work.
Yeah, well, thank you for your hard work, and mahalo nui loa. Hopefully we can fill the advocacy paya.
That is another priority in the
yes,
next month.
absolutely,
Interviews.
I think so. Trustees, any questions for Lei? No, none? Okay, well, mahalo nui loa. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And again, Kamakana, thank you so much for standing down on this one. We look forward to your report next time. Okay? Let's see now, if we move to the next item on the agenda, community concerns and celebrations. Anything, trustees? Kapona? None? Okay, very good. Announcements? Well, anyone signed up for community concerns and celebrations?
Jermaine Meyer is on the line, but her hand is not raised, so I'm not sure.
Jermaine? You want to share anything? No? Okay, mahalo. Trustee Akaka, you have something you'd like to share? Okay, before we go to announcements and adjournment. Okay, we're in announcements.
Yes, just wanting to share this evening there is at 7 p.m. the Makakilo Kapolei Honokai Hale Neighborhood Board meeting that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is going to be presenting in.
Great.
So myself and McKenna, like.
Oh, okay, very good. Where's it going to be
public
again?
Policy. This is going to be the Makakilo Kapolei. Oh, where is it going to be at? Kapolei Hale.
Kapolei Hale,
Yes.
Neighborhood Board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Conference room A and B.
Okay. Anything else? Any other announcements, trustees? Okay, move for adjournment.
So move.
I heard both. Okay. Go ahead, Lei. Roll call.
Trustee Ahuna,
Aye. Yes. Sorry.
Trustee Akaka.
Aye.
Excuse me. Trustee Akina is excused. Trustee Alapo.
Aye.
Trustee Kanahele.
Kahele is an aye.
Trustee Lindsay. Trustee Souza. Trustee Waihe'e. excused. Chair Galutaria.
Aye.
That is 7 yes votes.
Okay. Mahalo nui loa, everybody. Next one, 11 o'clock, right? Okay, got it. We're adjourned.